Welcome to the Kratom Sobriety Podcast. My name is Charlie, and this week we welcome Ryan F to tell his story about quitting Kratom. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Why don't you go and introduce yourself so people know who you are?
Okay, so my name's Ryan. I'm born and raised in Arizona, currently still living there with my wife and our two kids. I've been a software engineer for the past 8 years or so. Before that, did media production, actually for a different podcast. And recently, I just accepted a new job starting next week to get into mortgage lending. So taking a turn with my career, aligning with getting sober and everything.
And what generation do you identify with?
I am a millennial. I was born in 93, so I'm about to turn 33 years old.
And outside of recovery, what are some things you do for fun or bring you happiness?
You know what? Truthfully, I've always been more like a workaholic, just like family and work. Pretty boring, actually. Like, for having fun for me, it's like going on a walk or watching a movie, taking the kids to the park or something, things like that.
All right. And when is your Kratom freedom date, so to speak?
So my sobriety date is March 21st, 2026. Technically, the last time I took Kratom was the March 19th. So this is actually my 70th day being completely sober.
And you emailed us, and thanks so much. I hope we helped a little bit along the way. You mentioned that you had some problems with alcohol before Kratom.
Yes. Right when I turned 18, I went to NAU, Northern Arizona University, for a business degree. And I was like, just couldn't get out of town fast enough. And so I took summer classes. And something happened one morning. I don't know what made me do this, but I decided to drink alcohol before walking to work and then doing all my classes. And I really liked the way it made me feel, got me out of my shell, just made me feel like, frankly, I could talk to girls better. I was just more social. I thought I was a more fun guy. And but anyways, as soon as I drank alcohol in the morning, it basically was 7 years of drinking alcohol from morning to night. So I was like an instant alcoholic. And that was like real problematic. Yeah, alcohol is one of those drugs where when you're young and everything, you can get away with it. But there was definitely some dark moments, mostly just dropping the ball at work. It was just ruining all the trust with my interpersonal relationships because I was a closet drinker. I wasn't like a go to the bar, have fun drinker. I was just drinking vodka all day, every day in secret. And I even actually went to rehab for that one time, like 12 years ago. But I left after 11 days. I just felt way too guilty to be stepping away from work. There's all these things that had to be canceled and I just felt horrible. So I left after 11 days, just basically did the classic thing where I removed the substance, but I didn't really change anything and didn't really reflect on anything. Just went right back to the same environment, same ways. The only thing that was missing was the thing I was leaning on. I didn't actually go inward, so to speak, and try to figure out why I even started drinking every day. And because once the physical dependence is removed, and you're still having that mental obsession, still craving and everything, from my experience, that means that there's something that's still wrong that fundamentally hasn't been addressed. Like they say, the drugs or the alcohol are more like the solution to a problem or like the symptom of a deeper problem, not necessarily the problem itself.
Before you started using Kratom, had you stopped drinking or anything like that?
I had maybe made it 2 weeks tops. That was like my record, like going 2 weeks. During that 7 years, there was probably like one time I went 2 weeks, maybe a time where I went 10 days, 5 days, really small, fleeting moments of sobriety.
How were you introduced to Kratom?
So what happened was I met my now wife and we had a baby on the way. I wish I could say I quit drinking immediately. I didn't stop drinking until a month before he was born. That's actually my longest stretch of sobriety. I made it 90 days. I'm at day 70 right now. But that was like what they call white knuckling it. I had some come to Jesus moment at an AA convention and I was like, all right, I'm going to get sober. And I made it 90 days, but I was white knuckling it. At that time, it was really stressful. I had a newborn baby. I was like Ubering in the morning and then doing a call center job 9 to 5, blah, blah, blah. And so I was really stressed out. And when I was Ubering, I was always listening to a podcast and I was trying to find something to help. And it was actually on a very popular podcast. I heard about this stuff called Kratom. And I tried CBD. I knew I couldn't smoke weed just because the way my compulsive substance abuse mindset worked. I knew that would just lead me back to everything else, anything that was truly psychoactive. But I heard about this stuff called Kratom. I'll never forget, the first stuff I bought was powder. And basically, I remember I was cleaning my apartment. I was listening to some documentary. I mixed up this horrible green sludge, drink it, and I just got that kind of feeling, just this feeling of the stress melting away. And I remember thinking, wow, this is cool. What is this, like a tea? I feel great. I remember I stressed out, had dinner with my mom and my stepdad that evening, and my wife and my newborn baby. And I just remember instead of feeling like, oh God, I'm stressed out, I got all this stuff going on, I'm at dinner with my folks and I got this baby here, everything just felt totally fine, really good. And me being an addict, it wasn't like I thought, oh, maybe next weekend I'll do this again. It was like I did that first thing in the morning, just all day, every day. I remember at the call center job, I was taking the powder. I would go in the bathroom and mix it with my coffee in the stall and then drink it at my desk. And in looking back, it's crazy because I never thought to myself, this is a drug. You are taking a drug. That's why you're having to hide it in the bathroom. And it's not normal to have a bottle of green powder in your pocket at work and you're not telling anyone about it. So I was in total denial. I don't know what I was thinking at the time exactly, but I do think I was in deep denial because in my mind, I was like, I'm sober. I remember picking up my 4-year AA chip because I hadn't drank out. I went 4 years no alcohol, but I was doing Kratom basically the entire time. And I remember picking up the 4-year AA chip, stoned out of my mind on Kratom, genuinely not even thinking like, you're a fraud, you're high right now getting an AA chip. I really thought that what I was doing was, oh, it's a sister to the coffee plant. This is a natural alternative. This is like coffee. It just gives me energy.
How long ago was that when you first started?
So I did Kratom. So I did alcohol really hard for 7 years, and then I switched to Kratom for 7 years. That's where we're at now. But like the last 3.5 years or so or maybe more like the last 4, it's all a blur, but basically the last 4 years, I've been bouncing back between alcohol and Kratom, where essentially it's like I'll try to quit Kratom, and then I can't stand the not sleep. Like I got 2 kids and not trying to make excuses. When you can't sleep for you're at a week, basically not sleeping, anxiety through the roof, you still got a stressful job, taking the kids to school, all this stuff. You can only go so long without not sleeping before you start to lose your mind a little bit. So what always happened for me was I would either say, okay, screw this, I can't take this anymore. I'm going to just take Kratom, but I'm going to taper off is what I told myself. I'll take less this time. I'll taper down. Just need to manage my sleep and my anxiety. Or I would say, okay, I've already made it a week. I'm just going to drink alcohol just so I could black out basically and go to sleep tonight. But then for me, once I always called Kratom my anti-alcohol drug, where as soon as I drink alcohol, then it's like, I didn't want to look at Kratom. Now I'm back on alcohol. And Kratom, especially when I got into the liquid extracts, it was much more destructive on my finances, but it was like a slow killer. And you had to take it in the middle of the night to go back to sleep, all this crazy stuff. But alcohol is like the kiss of death for me, where once I start drinking alcohol, especially now that I'm older, for whatever reason, things just get bad really quickly.
It sounds like you discovered Kratom right before the pandemic.
Yeah, I did actually. Yeah, it must have been 2018 or 2019, actually. The early 2019 is when I discovered it.
And how did you move from the powder to the extracts?
Basically, it was one of those things where if it's not broke, don't fix it. Once I found this powder, my brain locked on shit. I was like, okay, this is what I'm doing now. But something must have clicked where they just told me they had capsules or something. And I thought to myself, that would be more convenient. Plus, it's so gross. So I started buying the capsules. And it's just so much easier to gobble down 15 Kratom capsules at a time than drinking some gross drink. And it was also a little bit easier to dose, even though I wasn't really cognizant of like how much I was taking. I was just kind of just taking it. I think that's what happened. But yeah, so I was doing the capsules for a long time. And then one time, my brother of all people, we were on the phone and he was driving and I was telling him, man, I really like this stuff called Kratom. And he's, I've heard about that. I've seen it at the gas station. I was on the phone with him. I'm actually walking there right now. I'm going to try it. And he was like telling me, oh yeah, it's like a 5-hour energy bottle. I'm like, 5-hour energy bottle? What are you talking about? This is like a pill or a powder. And then, so that got me curious. And so I was using this one type of Kratom extract shot for a while. And then I don't even remember the first time I tried. I think they were out of the type I was buying. And then I decided to try those little blue glass bottles with Kratom and Kava. And then my brain put it together pretty quick that I like this even more. And I think it was the Kava has more of an instantaneous effect. So anyways, I went from powder to capsules to doing capsules and those little blue bottles. And I ramped up pretty quick. Part of my substance abuse quirk, I guess you could say, is I don't always take more when I really need more. I kind of just compulsively take them. I'm so stressed and I got all this stuff going on and it's just on my mind. Oh, I'll just get 2 more on the way to work. Oh, it's on my lunch break. I'll just get 2 more. It's not even like I'm still feeling what I was taking from what I'd taken before. But man, I was getting up to about 10 of those blue bottles a day, sometimes 12. The most I ever did was 14 in one day. But I was also taking the capsules at the same time. I would wake up in the middle of the night and I just couldn't, I was just wide awake. So I would either jump in my car, sneak out and drive to Circle K. And I would have to go to all these different gas stations because I was so embarrassed about doing this. And I would either buy more of those blue bottles or I would just gobble down 20 pills or something. And then suddenly everything's fine again, play on my phone for a little bit and go back to bed. But really destructive, so expensive, and it's just dehydrating like crazy. You don't eat right, and it's just horrible. It was a really bad drug to get addicted to. But in the beginning, it felt like a superpower. Like earlier on, especially before I got into the liquid stuff, I'm not trying to make it sound good because it spiraled out into something very bad. But in the beginning, I was doing Uber in the morning, then doing a call center during the day, had a newborn baby. And also I was getting a different degree in computer science. And so I was doing my night classes. And for me, it was like I would wake up and I'm tired as heck, but I just would drink a bunch of coffee, take a bunch of Kratom capsules, and then make more coffee and take more Kratom into my car and would Uber around. And it felt like this, it just spiked me with energy and give me energy to go throughout the day, but not just go throughout the day, but I felt good. I was cracking jokes. I was more sociable. In hindsight, I was probably the most annoying Uber driver in the world. Right? I'm just talking too much. But anyways, so that's what it was like for me with regard to going from powder to capsules to the liquid stuff.
And was it always either one or the other, drinking or Kratom, or did you ever cross over and do them both at the same time?
There were some moments where I did both, but really towards the end, whenever I would relapse on alcohol, that became the thing I wanted now. It was like, I don't know why exactly. I think it's just, they call it the phenomenon of craving, which is specifically with alcohol. I don't know why, but that's what I would do. But mostly what it was, I was taking so much Kratom that I don't really, it's like this. Like one of the reasons why I will never smoke weed again. They say never, one day at a time. But in my mind, I'm like, I will never do any of this stuff again. It was because as soon as I smoke weed, it might take a week or whatever, but then I'll start doing it all day, every day. And then I don't really feel different. For me, part of my substance abuse is wanting to change the way I feel. So if I'm constantly stoned, then that's not really going to do anything for me. And so I'll reach for something else. And same thing with Kratom, where after a while, when I'm taking so much Kratom, but it's not helping, it's not a superpower anymore. I'm not feeling at ease and social. I'm feeling like a nervous wreck still. Then I would reach for alcohol. And then that would make me feel different. But the thing is though, man, mixing Kratom and alcohol will make you sick. There were some days where or some nights rather, where I would drink alcohol and then be like, whoa, that was crazy. I'm just going to go back to Kratom in the morning. And then in the morning, I couldn't stomach the liquid Kratom. I would take them and I would immediately throw it up basically.
Did you ever end up escalating to 7-OH?
I only did it one time. It's so funny. I had made friends at this smoke shop, not really friends, but acquaintances. And one day I used to actually work on my laptop at this coffee shop right next to the smoke shop. And I would go there throughout the day buying more Feel Frees, so ashamed and embarrassed, but I would do that. And then I would chain smoke cigarettes and work on my laptop. And anyways, one day I didn't have any more money and I was venting to this guy about stuff going on in my life. I can't stop this. I'm stressed about work. I was having marital problems and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, they would actually sometimes front me Feel Frees because they knew I was there multiple times a day. There were some times where I'm like, hey, my invoice is going to get here later today. Can you just give me 2 and then I'll pay you this afternoon? And this one time the guy's like, hey man, no, I can't front you any Feel Frees today. But I'll tell you what, I got some of this stuff and he gave it to me. And I found out after I took them, he said it was 7-OH. But thankfully I didn't get heavily into 7-OH because from what I've heard, that's even a step up and even more difficult to get off of.
If you can disentangle, did you have any health problems just from the Kratom?
I still to this day have a sty on my eye. I got a sty on one eye and then the next year I got it on the other one where those just, that happened. Not to be gross, but I would throw up quite frequently. I used to throw up all the time when I was drinking alcohol. Every morning before my first drink, all this stuff. I did that so I could stomach alcohol. And the same thing started to happen. There were some times where I would drink, feel freeze, and then immediately expel it from my body, let's say. And then I'd be so mad because I'm like, oh my God, I just wasted $20. So I was having to manage my stomach basically. And there was one time where, I don't know, I fainted. I don't think I had a seizure per se, but there was one time, even before the liquid stuff, where I'd been taking a lot of Kratom, I stood up, stretched, and suddenly this womp feeling, and I just fell backwards and passed out. I think that, looking back, I think that was from the Kratom. And yeah, so that was the extent of it, just being extremely dehydrated, feeling just weak and lethargic all the time. I was like I was like emaciated, a shell of a person. I always felt so guilty. My kids would be all over me like, hey, let's do this, let's do that. And I'd be like, oh, I'm really tired. Or my wife would cover for me, oh, dad's sick right now. And but then the only thing that would spruce me up would be like taking 2 of those blue bottles or sometimes 3 at a time. And then I would have this fleeting maybe hour, 2 hours where I could try to be super dad and make up for it. Oh, I'm really tired. Let me go to the store real quick, come back. Okay, let's bake cookies or cook dinner. Or let's listen to music and dance and stuff. So that's the thing. There were these moments where everything felt good, but they were so fleeting. And even when I was feeling good, I heard the other day in an AA meeting, we only knew anxiety, depression, and excitement. I thought I'd never heard a phrase like that before, where I was always depressed about looking back at my 14 years of substance abuse and all the shame, embarrassment, guilt, all this, or so anxious looking forward at all the work projects, bills. How am I going to pay the car bill? Oh my God, I'm going to have to ask my brother to loan me money, things like this. But then in those moments where things felt good, it really wasn't true happiness or joy, definitely not anything close to peace. It was more like feeling manic and excited. And sorry, I'm rambling, but I forget what your question was even. But yeah, like
it was about the health issues.
The health stuff. Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
and
so
obviously it had a big effect on your mental health as well.
Oh, yeah. So that was the big thing. Just the emotional, just being an emotional wreck, and being a fraud, always lying to people. Oh, yeah, I'm sober and all this stuff. So, yeah, but my health too, for sure.
And your pocketbook, paint us a picture about that.
If you're doing on average, forgetting about the capsules, I had a supplier, or not, a smoke shop where I got a pretty good deal on the buy one, get one, buy a whole kilo of capsules. That didn't necessarily break the bank. But the little blue bottles, they're $10 a bottle, and I was taking on average 10 a day. So you could do the math. That's like $3,000 a month, which is pretty darn serious. And yeah, I was making good money. I was a software engineer, but I was donating plasma, and I was borrowing money from multiple family members. And that's probably the hardest part about the Kratom addiction. Forget about, oh, I'm literally dependent on this, needed to go back to sleep. It's making me feel like a shell of myself. Alcohol, a lot of drugs will do that, but I always say it destroys you financially before it bankrupts you spiritually. Like, it destroyed my finances. There was even times where I tried to start a business and did all this stuff, but I'm still using that. And it was just zapping all my funds, made life extremely difficult.
And before, I know we're going to talk about you went to rehab, but did you have any serious attempts to quit before you got to that state?
Definitely. It's embarrassing to say, but I would give my wife my wallet and my keys and sometimes even my phone, because that was more for when I was going back and forth to alcohol too. But basically the answer is yes. It's so weird, especially just to be frank, as a man, you're supposed to be like this. My wife doesn't work. I'm supposed to be like the provider of the family and all this. I was trying to build safeguards in my life. I cannot stop doing this. And I should be careful too, because it's not that I cannot do it. I was choosing not to do it, but it was like I couldn't choose not to do it. Like I needed it. And it was just so compulsive, so knee-jerk. But yeah, I would do things like that. I would tell my family members, put it out in the open. I would confide in someone at work. I would try to create systems in my life where people would try to basically make it or hold me accountable and try to create systems where I wouldn't be able to continue spending money on these. But I'm sure a lot of addicts can relate, just being very manipulative, very deceptive, especially my wife doesn't drive. I would do things like, hey, like this is so crazy, but I would literally say, hey, I'm going to only pay for things in cash, bring you back receipts so you could see what's going on. And just do things like after a while, just get cash back. And then so it's more incognito, or find change around the house, sell things, just crazy things. And then eventually that only lasts a few weeks before it's back out to being in the open. So yeah, I would try to quit. I would usually make it 7 to 10 days. And then I would say, screw this, I'm going back to the Kratom, or I'd say, all right, I'm this far into the withdrawals, I'm just going to drink NyQuil, or I'm just going to drink vodka or something. And then that would always spiral out into a whole new can of worms.
And what was the steps that finally brought you to say, I need to do something dramatic and go to a residential rehab?
Yeah. Just to not beat around the bush, it was a DUI. So for me, I don't want to say unable to quit, because the thing is I could have quit. It's just that I couldn't function. And I felt all this pressure and the shame and guilt of just saying to my boss, hey, I am addicted to drugs and I am going to go to a rehab, without getting too much into my past and everything and work stuff. I just felt like I couldn't go to rehab. I had too much on the line. I had bills to pay. I have a wife and 2 kids. So luckily, it's all a positive thing in hindsight. Luckily, I got a DUI I'd actually gone to a mental health facility for a week to sober up. And I basically got out and immediately relapsed, because I was like, my boss was very graceful. I told him I was going to a mental health facility for a week. He's okay. Hey, let me know I could help. And then, but I wasn't really sober at this place. It was like a detox. So they put you on all these prescriptions. And at the time I was wanting to get high. So I was like, yeah, give me gabapentin, give me Ativan taper. That all sounds good. But I wasn't really sober. I left, went right back to these stressful projects, all the home life stuff, the marital issues. And I just immediately relapsed for 2 weeks. And I hadn't drank in 25 days, but this one morning I couldn't afford any more Feel Frees. And I had a little bit of money on my plasma card, which is crazy because I was making good money. But this is where I was at. And I basically bought vodka. And at this point, my addiction was so bad. I'm just being transparent because I think it's good for people to be honest about what they're going through. I was at the point where I would actually steal alcohol. That was one of the ways where I would and I even stole Feel Frees a few times. This is like one of the ways where I would be able to do this off the radar, off the book, so to speak, so people wouldn't know. So anyways, I drank some alcohol, stole some more alcohol, drank it. And I won't get into too much of the weeds of what happened, but it was a really bad DUI. Luckily, nobody got hurt. I didn't crash my car, but it wasn't like I just got pulled over. There were some things that were involved with this DUI that made it extra bad. And that brought a lot of shame too, more than anything I'd ever experienced in my life. And so this brought me to my knees. I was arrested. And and I was not allowed to come back home. Let's just say my wife was, to her credit, rightfully, she was sick of all this constant relapsing, lying and everything. So she was like, cool off at your brother's house for a few days. She's sorting her own mind out. She was going through her own stuff. And basically my brother's friend, who had got me into rehab 2.5 years ago, but I left early again because I felt so guilty about being in rehab with a wife and kids. He's got a message to me. He said, dude, go back to that rehab place. So this time I was like, they call it incomprehensible demoralization. I was incomprehensibly demoralized. I was basically defeated. So that was what it took for me to finally say, okay, even though I want to be Mr. Superman and keep the house running and not let down my boss and wake up in the same house as my kids, I realized that I'm useless to everyone if I don't get sober. So I went to this rehab place, and the dude who suggested that I go in there, he said, hey, just do me one favor. He said, just shut the F up and do what those people tell you to do. This is what they do. They get people sober. And so that's what I did. It was a 45-day program. I was thinking about doing another 45 days. And I was like, should I do it? The people who had been sober for multiple decades, they're like, yes, do it. People at AA, before all this happened, they told me I needed a 60 to 90-day program because I was the type of guy at AA drinking in the parking lots, just a mess. And anyways, they actually ended up moving me to the second phase after 37 days. And then I only did 28 days of the IOP, like where you could leave the rehab during the day to look for work and stuff. I have a new job starting next Monday. And I had one final court date. So anyways, I left a little bit early, but I did 65 days in total, actually. I told you 70 on the phone just because it was, for some reason, I said 70. I guess that was an easier number to work with. But anyways, so yeah, I finally, usually 12 years ago, I left after 11 days. 2.5 years ago, I left after 18 days. And people had to lie to me. They're like telling me, oh, it's a 30-day program because they knew I wouldn't stay 45 days. But this time I stayed 65 days, which is totally out of my character. I'm the type of guy who goes to rehab and bounces, is like, okay, I'm just never going to drink again. But this time it was way different. And I did 65 days and it was a really good experience. It was at a Crossroads in Arizona. If anyone knows that place, highly recommended.
Okay. Were you ended up in a sobriety court?
Yeah, I had basically some class 6 felony aggravated DUI. Yes. Luckily, the plea that I accepted, I was very humble about it. I wasn't trying to fight the system. I don't mean to say humble. I know it's not humble to say you're humble, but what I meant is I recognize what I did was wrong. It could have hurt someone that day. So I was not trying to plead my case. I was just like, hey, you know what? I messed up. Just whatever happens. Apparently, this is what needed to happen for me to finally be shooken up and say, hey, what the heck are you doing? You got to stop doing this stuff. But yeah, we did a continuance on the first court date while I was in treatment. Frankly, I think this wasn't my ulterior motive, but being in a treatment center, checking myself in, I think it looked really good. I think that's why I got such a good plea agreement. But yeah, I actually just got out of a rehab like 3 or 4 days ago. And then the next day had my final sentencing. Yesterday, I met with my probation officer. I'm on probation for 3 years. But all of this stuff I'm looking as a blessing and a positive. If there's going to be more systems in my life to make sure that I have more incentives to not screw up again, I'm inviting all that. At the end of the day, like for me, going forward in my life, abusing substances is just not a life I want to live. So if there's people who are trying to ensure that's the way I go forward, I'm just trying to be positive about it all.
One of the reasons I was curious, I'm sure your probation involves monitoring your alcohol use, right?
Yeah,
Is it also include monitoring your kratom use?
that's a good question. And basically, I'm not sure. So usually these places, they're pretty cheap. They just do a standard 12-panel drug screening. But I have heard someone at the rehab said that they test for mitragynine now, like for kratom. So I wanted to ask my probation officer, but I didn't because I didn't want to make it sound like I was like wondering if I could get away with it. So I don't know for sure, but I have heard that they do that now.
This is unsolicited advice, but I would tell on myself and say, you should be testing me for kratom too. If you really want to build a protective wall, and I don't want to get in an extra legal problem or anything, but
You know what's funny? She was yesterday when I met her, she's, I'll probably stop by your house tomorrow. And I was like, all right, I'm actually doing this podcast tomorrow morning. And she's, oh, send me a link to the episode was published. So she'll hear it from this podcast if she listens to it.
All right.
Because that's a good idea. You're absolutely right. At the rehab place I went to, frankly, I know that they told me they were testing for mitragynine, but I actually know that they weren't. And yeah, that's one of those things where even at a rehab 2.5 years ago I went to, I remember one time a guy who was there for opioids had someone bring him in and a kratom extract shot. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why kratom was such a functional drug for me for so long was because it flew under the radar. It didn't show up in drug tests. You didn't slur your words. It was like just bad enough to be like a slow killer. And it's almost worse than something that makes you nod off in the middle of work day or makes your life blow up. The fact that it's a pretty semi-functional drug makes it even more dangerous in some ways because you could do it for so long.
It's one of the insidious parts about it. And most people that have been on our podcast had a honeymoon period or there was performance boosts, and then it is a little bit slower destruction than maybe an alcohol problem. While you were at treatment, did they primarily treat you for alcoholism, or was kratom part of the recovery?
If I'm being really honest, it was really for everything.
Yeah.
What I mostly told people I was there for was alcohol. Because when you say kratom, a lot of people are like, what's kratom? And frankly, I actually had some shame about saying kratom because here I am, I'm like a software engineer coming in with a kratom addiction where some of these people I always felt like it's a toxic thing in recovery spaces where it's like a competition. Oh, you were addicted to kratom? I was homeless for 18 million years, addicted to fentanyl and was doing home invasions. And it's, oh, geez, all right. So anyways, I kind of didn't really mention it. Towards the end, though, I realized that was silly and dumb and just ego. Towards the end, I was more honest. Yeah, it was alcohol and kratom. But when I was talking to people in the beginning, I just said alcohol, just to keep it simple.
Yes. And it also allows you to go to AA and just fit in and not have to worry about being misunderstood. How did you find our podcast?
Gosh, I think it was a subreddit. There's the Quitting Kratom subreddit and that other one for those blue bottles.
Yeah.
And I think I remember seeing a link to the podcast because whenever I would try to get sober from kratom, I noticed that I would just start YouTubing it. It was almost like my brain wanted to get as close as kratom as possible without actually doing it. So I was just listening for information, trying to just educate myself. I had done AA in the past too, so there was definitely a part of me that enjoyed hearing other people's experience with alcoholism. And I think I've listened to every single episode of this podcast. I would listen to it at nighttime when I couldn't go back to bed. I used to sleep at the office. I'm in one of these stressful IT jobs that I was on. I slept at the office twice a week. I'd be in there on the couch. gobbling Kratom, still having trouble sleeping, just listening to that podcast, trying to plan a taper. But yeah, this podcast brought me a lot of peace because most people didn't know what Kratom was. It was like my dirty little secret. And I just hearing the stories on this podcast, hearing other people, a lot of the people who go through Kratom addiction specifically, I find there's some similarities. And so yeah, I really enjoyed listening to this podcast.
So how are you doing today?
Even though I'm jabbering a million miles per hour, maybe I shouldn't have drank 2 Red Bulls before this. Basically, I'm feeling better than ever. Truly, I can honestly say that. In the past, when I would get sober for just a little bit of time, I didn't really make it out of the withdrawals. Or even back in the day when I'd made it 90 days, I really didn't think about what needed to change in me. And so I've realized it's so much more than just abstaining from substances. For me, I realized they call them character defects. I had basically a lot of self-image issues, a lot of negative self-thinking. If I'm being vulnerable and honest, the big things for me was insecurity, shame, guilt, comparing myself to others, feeling like I'm not successful enough. I'm just not enough. I always need more. I felt like I needed to own my own business. I needed to get even more money. And I was impatient. I went about everything the wrong way. So this time, and I would use substances to help mask that feeling. And there's a lot more to it, but basically I was hanging on to the past, felt so much shame about just who I am and what I've done, all the lying, deception, relapsing. And what I realized in those 65 days there is that's fundamentally what needs to stop. I'm not going to spend the next 33 years of my life beating myself up, constantly dwelling in shame, thinking about the previous years of my life. And also realizing that there's not some magic moment that's going to happen. I'm not going to hear some magic spell or something. I just need to let go of it. Like they say, just like in AA, they say, let go and let God or whatever. But I just need to let go of that stuff. And I feel just a sense of peace. Also, I was a software engineer and I love software engineering. I really do. But I have all this bad juju tied to it. And it's really hard to get a job in tech anyways right now. And I just wanted to do something else. So some magical series of events, someone through AA advised me to apply at their company. I'd always been interested in being a loan officer. And now I have this new career set up starting Monday. I'm not having this stress about going back to fixing databases and stuff. And yeah, I just feel really good. Just feel like it's a totally new life ahead of me and just way more inner peace.
Congratulations. Sounds like a good start. So do you have a relapse prevention plan?
Yes, I do. And just to note on what you said, you're right. It sounds like a great start, which is an important thing because really 70 days is not much at all. They have that pink cloud effect and all this. So definitely on my toes. I feel more confident than ever, but definitely keeping my guard up, knowing that I could have some crazy idea. But the big thing for me is realizing that there's no amount of stress big enough for me to use that stress as an excuse to relapse. So I don't think of the worst thing that could happen to me or my family. I'm not going to say, oh, this is so horrible. Guess I'm going to use this as an excuse to relapse. So that was another big epiphany I had. I would always use the suffering and negative experiences of people in my life as a way to justify, this is stressing me out. I need a relapse. But you had asked about a relapse prevention plan. Basically, for me, what that looks like is just staying involved with AA. I got a huge Rolodex of people in AA or just good friends, really great friends that I met through the program. Shout out to Blake if he hears this. But anyways, yeah, just call on people, go on walks. I love to hit the sauna when I'm really wigging out. And let's see, also just sharing with the people closest to me, what are the early warning signs that I might be fixing a relapse soon, trying to plan really early trips to the store that don't make sense. Oh, it's 5:30 a.m. I'm going to go get some milk. Things like that, as well as just me only talking about finances or if I'm only talking about work. Just if they see me spiraling into some of these old thought patterns, just to maybe keep an eye on me. But yeah, things like that.
So based on your experience, do you think Kratom is a good idea for somebody that's in active addiction?
Absolutely not. Here's what I would say. If you are addicted to fentanyl, where if you take a hit and it's too powerful, you could literally die. Yeah, sure, you could get on Kratom, but the reality is you probably need to go to rehab. Most people don't just, there are some rare people who white knuckle it off fentanyl and stuff, but if you're thinking about using Kratom, if you're an active addiction and you're thinking of using Kratom as a harm reduction, as they call it, or something like that, I do not think that is a good idea. You need to just nip it in the bud and go to a 90-day program, probably. That's just what I think. If you're an active addiction on Kratom, if that's what you're asking, and you're thinking, oh, should I continue doing Kratom? I would say no way, because it's just like all drugs. Your tolerance is going to go up and up, and you're going to spend more and more money. And the financial stress causes, the key word is stress, causes more stress, which is going to make you want to take more Kratom. You're going to have to lie even more. And it's just going to, from my experience, maybe there are some people who could do Kratom on the weekends, just like some people could have beer on the weekends. But if you know in your heart that you are addicted to Kratom, you're finding yourself saying, I'm going to stop, and then not stopping. You're taking it multiple times throughout the day. When you quit taking it, you can't sleep. If you're physically dependent on Kratom, you have to take that really seriously, because that means you're addicted to it. And if you're addicted to it, you likely won't have the willpower to do a taper. I hear about all these people talking about taper schedules and this and that. For me, that never worked. I'd maybe make it like 2-3 days, and then some stressful thing would happen, and I'd say, oh, I'm stressed, or oh, I have a big thing for work. I need to focus. I need to be me for a second and not be me in withdrawal that can't do anything right. So yeah, tapering just never worked for me. I think going cold turkey is the only way. But other times, where one time I had my dad come over here, my wife was out of town, and I was telling my dad, like, man, I can't stop drinking. I can't stop taking Kratom. I need help. He came over. We flushed all my Kratom down the toilet, and he just kept an eye on me, made sure I didn't leave the house for 3 or 4 days. And that was all good, except for then I was still in the same position, the same stressful job, life, family triggers, same stress, where it just, and 4 days isn't anything. It takes like 2 weeks at least before, if you're like taking a high dose of Kratom, you're not going to feel right for 2 weeks, and you're not going to feel energized. They call it anhedonia, where you just can't feel any positive emotions. That took me like 40 days while in treatment before I just didn't feel super tired all the time. And so if you're able to just power through it and go back to the 9 to 5 rat race, or especially for me, I was working like 50 hours a week, at least, sometimes more, where if you have a high demanding life with work and family, and you think you're just going to quit Kratom and just go back to that, you'd have to have the willpower. I commend you, because I just didn't have that willpower in me for whatever reason. It was just so much easier to just take Kratom and just make all those feelings go away, so I could go back to doing what I needed to do to get through the day. So yeah, I would say before your life blows up and something crazy happens, like me having to get a DUI, before I just really took it seriously and went into a rehab center, just maybe consider just going to rehab. It's so funny, because everything was actually fine. And truth be told, I had a nice support system. There were people who were getting groceries for my wife and kids and things like that. And so I didn't have to worry about it as much. But even that, there's a lot of guilt and shame that comes from other people taking care of your family while you're basically at a summer camp for addiction. But it's just, what are your alternatives? Are you going to keep on trudging forward with this horrible secret that's destroying you? Or are you going to just nip it in the butt, take it very seriously, and just get it behind you? And then also not just quit the drugs, but hopefully have some sort of transformation of your inner self and set up a new environment. So when you come back, you're not coming back to the exact same thing. Maybe you actually want a career change or something big to fundamentally change what your life looks like, so it's not the same life that you were kind of numb away from.
And yeah, don't beat yourself up. It's not so much about willpower. Your story and my story are similar. I had a long history with alcoholism myself. I went to a 6-month rehab in the middle of the 90s when you were like 3 years old. And I wish I could have said I maintained continuous sobriety since then. The one difference in our story is once I quit drinking, it's been 6 years now. It was during the pandemic. I haven't, even during my Kratom addiction, I didn't go back to drinking, but I was doing Kratom, and I was actually leading an AA meeting once a week, but I'm doing Kratom. For most people, especially all the ones that have appeared on our podcast, if you have a previous history with addiction, or if you're currently dealing with abusing other substances, for the most part, it ends up being a transfer addiction to Kratom. The Kratom doesn't end up being the solution. It might be able to temper your alcohol cravings for a little bit, but eventually Kratom itself becomes the addiction. And then oftentimes it does lead to relapse back to your drug of choice or in a couple cases, something much worse.
I appreciate that because that's one of the hardest parts about addiction is people who aren't addicts just not understanding. People have to realize it's like, I don't want to be this way. Even though, yes, I am. No one's magically making me drive to the store to go buy more. But if you haven't ever experienced what it's like to almost feel like you're floating above yourself, knowing, like they say, insanity is doing the same thing over, expecting different results. I heard in rehab, even more insanity is doing the same thing, knowing that the results are going to be horrible. And so, if you've ever been caught in that cycle where it really is more than willpower, you're stuck in a really bad cycle, and it can be very scary, it can be very lonely, and it can be just downright embarrassing and frustrating. And for me, there are people in my life who are always like, just stop. And it just makes you feel bad because you're like, dude, you don't understand. Like, that just isn't happening.
Yeah.
I need this. I have a big project I'm working on, and I can't be in withdrawals doing this project. That's just not going to happen. This is managing my state of mind. I need this like I need air. It's horrible. I always say, imagine you were holding your breath, but you weren't going to die. And it's like, okay, hold your breath. Now get your kids ready for school. Okay, now go answer all your emails. Okay, now try to solve this complicated software issue. Okay, now go to the grocery store. And the whole time you could slip into the bathroom or drive down the street real quick and take a breath of air. No one will know. And then you'll feel better for a second. An extreme comparison, but that's really what it's like. It's not something where you're like, you know what? I just kind of like the way this makes me feel. I know I'm preaching to the choir. People on the podcast will get it, but this is something that I fundamentally needed to function as an adult and as a professional, as a dad, as a husband.
And then I struggled with the Kratom use, was always thinking, at least it's not as bad as drinking. And there might be a little bit of truth to that, but in the end, to me, it got to the point where it was just as bad as drinking, and then it was all the same. All right, we're winding down here. Is there any big lessons you've learned about recovery over the last couple of months?
Yeah, I touched on it a bit earlier. For me, the big thing was that just removing the substances isn't going to fundamentally change how you feel. If anything, it's going to make you feel worse. And that most of us probably know our negative qualities, especially as it relates to our self-image and our negative thinking. And I think a lot of addicts can probably relate that shame is a big part of it. And I heard something interesting, which is that guilt is feeling guilty for what you've done. Shame is feeling basically shame for who you are. And just realizing that you can't beat yourself up for the rest of your life and expect to have inner peace. I heard that peace is the foundational positive emotion for all other positive emotions. You can't really feel joy without peace. You need to first just be able to forgive yourself, feel at peace, and that there's not going to be some magical thing that happens. I'm talking about once you get sober and you're beating yourself up and you're going through that, you have to just turn the page, put the past away. No one else is thinking about you 24/7. And fundamentally, those emotions exist for a reason. They're there to let you know when you've basically damaged your interpersonal relationships. You're doing something that's affecting people around you in a bad way, or you feel guilty about whatever. But you can't live in those emotions, and you just have to change it. And you just have to basically just decide to stop. And for me, I like the expression, change the channel. I would have these thought spirals, and you're starting to think about this, work, this, that, whatever, especially in early sobriety when I was at the rehab place. Stressing out, feeling, oh man, my boss is going to be so pissed. And oh God, you just got to just change the channel. Quit thinking about that. And what was the other thing I was going to say? 1 second. Yeah. So anyways, taking knowledge isn't enough. You have to put into action. Just knowing that you shouldn't have negative thinking isn't the same as stopping negative thinking. And I actually do find 12-step groups to be a good thing. Not because there's necessarily something absolutely perfect and magical about the big book or the 12 steps, but it's really just about connecting with other people and having a sense of community, a place where you can go where people are way less judgmental. And just for me, I got a thick skull. I need that kind of constant reminder. But then also fundamentally realizing that your environment is a big part of it. My whole ego and identity was tied to, I am a software engineer. That's who I am. And I am so proud to be a software engineer because blah, blah, blah. It's hard and you can make good money and all this. And for me, I had to let go of that. You realize that was clouding my judgment. I have a new career path set up. Who knows? Maybe it'll go well. But just having the courage to be bold and change big core beliefs that you have in identity. You're not being afraid to change your identity. I'm not a software engineer. I'm Ryan. You know what I mean? And I could have any career. And who cares? Software engineer, working in mortgage lending. It's all just a job. You don't make I think a lot of people that I've met who are addicted to Kratom are also workaholics, and just not making that your core identity. And I feel like there was something else that I wanted to touch on with respect to a big epiphany, so to speak. But
yeah, the 12 steps aren't for everybody, but if you feel comfortable there, it's very accessible. It's been around for nearly a century now. There's things you want to work the program, but you don't have to take everything as dogma. And
exactly,
if you wrap around the people there in the community and develop relationships with the group and with individuals, your life will, I promise you, will be a lot better than abandoning all that. I, at one point, didn't drink for 10 years, not to scare you. And my life got way better. I had kids. I started a business. I bought a home. I ended up drinking again, partly because I separated from the recovery support. So you don't have to disaster plan about what will happen to you in your 40s. But you and I probably have similar histories, very addictive personalities with both kratom and alcohol. So it'll just be something that we have to manage.
Yeah, two things just to touch on there is, yeah, you're right. Like the 12 steps, they're not like some magical, perfect thing. Really, don't obsess about the God stuff. It's really about just clearing your mind. What is eating you up inside? Talk to someone about it. And they say, give it up to God. It's really just let go of it. That's really the big thing. And then saying you're sorry to people, just making amends, all these big things, and then just trying to help out someone. I feel like the 12 steps are overcomplicated, a little bit dogmatic, like you said. It's really just about clearing your mind, clearing your conscience, and just saying, okay, I'm done with this. And I'm going to try to stay involved with this to help other people. Because there is something beautiful that happens when you're sober. You try to help someone else get sober. It reinvigorates your sobriety. Yeah.
2 more questions. Do you have anything you're looking forward to this summer? Anything plans with your kids or anything?
Absolutely, I am. In the past, I was always broke and I was just emaciated and totally exhausted. And I would be boring. Like I was saying, I could only get an hour or two of being energized enough to be something like a good dad with my kids. I'm excited. I've never taken my son. He's 7. I've never taken him camping somehow. I've been all lost in my own head and work and stuff. So we're going to go camping. We're going to see the Grand Canyon. Just feeling present. I remember some guy at rehab 2.5 years ago. He's like, just wait till you could feel present with your kids on Christmas. I'm excited, not necessarily just this summer or Christmas, but just to feel present with my family and just not be constantly obsessing about getting my next 2 blue bottles or whatever. So yeah, I'm just going to keep it light and just try to be present with my family, not stress about the future, and feel something like peaceful instead of constantly stressed out 24/7. So that's what I got planned.
Great. And any parting advice that you have, anybody that's thinking about quitting kratom or...
Yeah, I guess I would say everyone's different. You know yourself better than everyone else probably, but there might be some things that you can't see within yourself. And I would really suggest going and talking to someone about it. Like for me, one of the things that led up to this was I saw a psychiatrist. Just talking to a psychiatrist, it made it feel way more real what was happening. Unfortunately, that wasn't enough for me to go to rehab or anything. But I guess I would really just say, if you're using kratom and you feel like you cannot stop, you want to stop, but you can't, and if it is making your life more than just unmanageable, like if it is fundamentally ruining your life, ruining your marriage or relationships, making you unable to be a good dad for your kids, it's destroying your finances, if it's making your life extremely difficult, and you got all these lists of reasons why you can't just step away from your life for 60 to 90 days and just get help, I would just strongly suggest that you just go do it anyways, because I don't care if you got to freaking sell your house or do something. You got to realize that if you go on like this, you're going to probably lose close to everything anyways, or all the material things that you're holding on to, your job, all this stuff. And that they say you can't pour from an empty cup. Just stop what you're doing, go get your cup refilled somewhere, really try to go inward, not just focus on letting go of the substances, but really trying to think, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? So yeah, I would strongly suggest people to go to rehab if they can relate to anything in my story with respect to feeling like you can't step away from work, you got a wife and 2 kids and all this. My marriage is way better with my wife since going to rehab. I got a new career set up. Things that I never thought would happen just by stepping away for 65 days. So yeah, I would strongly recommend rehab.
Good luck, Ryan. Thanks for reaching out to us, and we're rooting for you. And have good luck with your job on Monday, your new job.
Hey, thanks, man. All right. Hey, thanks for all the podcast episodes and for letting me be on this one. It was fun.
Thank you.